Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the lecture series of your CLAT examination. In this particular lecture series, we are discussing about the important aspects of the law which are going to be asked in your CLAT examinations, and specifically focusing over the legal reasoning portion of your CLAT syllabus. As you already know that from past few days we have been working over the different aspects of the law which are going to be asked in your examinations. We have so far completed with the constitutional law. We have completed the law of torts, the contract laws, family laws, and we have started with the international law, and we are discussing about the United Nations Charter. In our previous lecture series, we have discussed about the purpose and the principles of the United Nations as to why this particular organization was created and what exactly is the importance of this organization. And we discussed about the different organs of the United Nations, but we have not gone through in details as to what are the important aspects of these organs, why these organs are important when you talk about the United Nations, and how they are helpful in uplifting the society at large, and also making sure that all the nations, whomsoever are the members of the United Nations, are working together in collaboration so that we can attain the main objectives, or the, if I would say, the principles and the purposes that has been enumerated under Article 1 and 2. So without wasting our time, we'll be starting with this lecture series, and we will be focusing over the another articles that are going to be asked in your examination, in your CLAT examinations as such. So let's quickly revise and try to understand that whatsoever we have covered so far. If you can see the screen, you can see that we are talking about the United Nations Charter here. We are talking about the United Nations Charter, and we have discussed about the preamble, which says that we the people of the United Nations, the organization that has been created, and it has informed us about the important aspects or the important informations, the principles that are going to be fulfilled because of the formulation of this particular organization. All these things we have discussed. So if you want a detailed explanation and understanding about all these principles and purposes and whatsoever has been mentioned in the preamble, you can resort to the previous videos, which you will understand that what are the important what is the importance of this preamble as such. And everything has been completed in our previous lecture series. We have discussed about the purpose. The purpose of the United Nations are to maintain international peace and security, that we have discussed. We have also discussed the mnemonics, that how you can remember that what are the important purposes of the United Nations are to develop friendly relations among the nations, to achieve international cooperations. Then you have to be the center of harmonizing the actions of the nations. Then obviously we have discussed about the principles also, that what will be the principles. The principles has been enumerated under Article 2. So the one thing that every student, every CLAT aspirant should understand is that when you talk about CLAT examination, you are not supposed to get into the details of these particular articles as such, because the syllabus is vast, and in that particular syllabus you are supposed to answer those questions which are related to your syllabus only. So we will not be dealing in details as to what exactly this particular organization are doing and how they are helping the society at large, but we will obviously be going through the legislation that has been provided in regards to this particular organization. So we will be focusing our approach towards only the articles which are important, and obviously we will be understanding that how these legislations, or perhaps if I talk about United Nations Charter, how the United Nations Charter is helping in shaping the organization and fulfilling what exactly is needed by the society and by this particular organization. So we have discussed under Article 2 that the principles has been enumerated. We have already discussed it. The organization and its member in pursuit of the purposes stated under Article 1. Article 1, which talks about the purposes. on base of those purposes, we have enumerated different principles which needs to be fulfilled by all the members of the United Nations. So that are the principles that has been enumerated under Article 2. We have already gone through it, so we will not be dealing it, but just to revise these important portions, I'm just discussing it for a quite short period of time. Okay. Now, we have already completed till this Article 2. So now we will be shifting our focus towards another important portion of your United Nations Charter, that is Chapter 2, which is talking about the membership. As you already know that when this organization was created, that there was around a group of 50 members and who signed this treaty. So obviously those members and how the members can be a part of the United Nations, that has been enumerated under the Chapter 2, which talks about the membership of United Nations. Let's try to understand what exactly this article is saying. So if you see the Article 3 of the United Nations Charter, what does it say? It says the original members of United Nations shall be the states which have participated in the United Nations Conference or International Organization at San Francisco, or having previously signed a declaration by United Nations of 1st of January 1942, signed the present charter and ratified in accordance with Article 110. So it is saying that whomsoever member participated under the international conference which was organized under San Francisco, or who have signed the declaration of the United Nations that was on 1st of January 1942 and it has ratified in accordance to Article 110. So now obviously you will be curious to know what exactly 110 is, but obviously we will be discussing it in a later stage. But for you as of now, what you need to remember, there are three requisites which needs to be full. There are three requisites based on which a person can nation can be considered a member of the United Nations. The first is that they should have participated in the organization, in the International Organization Conference of the United Nations that was held at San Francisco. First thing. Second thing, they have previously signed the declaration by United Nations that was on 1st of January 1942 and that they have ratified it in accordance to Article 110. So these three things that you need to remember in regards to the membership. Now what else it is saying under Article 4, it is saying that the membership of the United Nations is open to all other peace-loving states which accept the obligations contained in the present charter and in the judgment of the organizations are able and willing to carry out these obligations. So now again, if you talk about the first initial article of Chapter 2, which is talking about the membership, you can understand that if you want to be a member, then their first thing is that they should have attended the conference that held in San Francisco. Second being, they have signed the United Nations Charter that was provided on 1st of January 1942 and have ratified the charter in accordance to Article 110. Apart from that, if there is any membership that needs to be given to any nation, the first requisite is that it should be a peace-loving nation. Second being, in the judgment of the organization. The nation which is willing to have the membership of the organization should be able to fulfill the obligations enumerated under the present chapter, or if I would say the present charter. I suppose you have understood that how the membership of United Nations are there, how Article 3 and Article 4 is actually helping us out in understanding that how the membership of United Nations will take place. The admission of any such, Article 4 is continuing here, it is saying that the admission of any such state to membership of United Nations will be effected by a decision of the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. So now it will be the Security Council based on whom recommendation, based on the recommendation of the General Assembly will admit such state to the membership of United Nations. Okay, so important point of discussion here. The first and the foremost point that you need to understand is that it will on the basis of the recommendation of the Security Council, that any member who has shown his willingness to join the United Nations, and obviously they are the peace loving nations, and according to the United Nations they will be able to fulfill the obligations that has been mentioned under this charter. They will be admitted if at all it is the recommendation of the Security Council that this particular nation should be admitted under the United Nations name. Article 15 talks about a member of the United Nations against which preventive or enforcement action has been taken by the Security Council may be suspended from the exercise of its rights and privileges of the membership by the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. The exercise of these rights and privileges may be restored by the Security Council. Okay, so now it is talking about the first three articles which is talking about the membership. Article 3, 4 and 5, which is talking about the membership, has explained us that how the membership of the United Nations can take place, how a nation can be a member of the United Nations. Obviously, first article talks about if they have been a part of San Francisco Conference, or they have signed the United Nations Charter that was presented on 1st of January 1942, and the third one being that they have ratified it in accordance to Article 110. This is the first requisite. Then the second requisite, the United Nations Charter, the United Nations will obviously be open to all the peace-loving nations. Another requisite is that the member of who is willing to join the United Nations should be a peace-loving state, and they should be able to fulfill the obligations that has been enumerated under the present charter. When we talk about Article 5, it is also talking about that whenever there is Article 4, which is talking about the admission of such membership in the United Nations, will be done by the decision of the Security Council based on the recommendation by the General Assembly based on the recommendation of the Security Council. So this is a very important point for you to remember, because the questions that will be put up in front of you when you talk about CLAT examination, they will be putting a paragraph where which they will be mentioning the whole article as such, the same article, the admission of such state to membership, or they can change it to admission of a state willing to be a member of the United Nations, will be affected by a decision, and they will change the name. They will change the name here. Instead of the General Assembly, they will mention Security Council, and instead of the Security Council, they will mention General Assembly. And then the questions would be put up in front of you stating that whether this particular argument is true, this argument is false, it partially is true, is partially false. So you need to correctly understand that it is by the General Assembly based on the recommendation of Security Council. General Assembly, but based on the recommendation of Security Council, a United Nation can admit any state who is a peace-loving state to be a member of the United Nations organization. But when we talk about Article 5, Article 5 is actually talking about restrictive approach. Restriction from membership. So restriction from membership says that a member of the United Nations against whom preventive or enforcement actions has been taken by the Security Council. Now, what is preventive and enforcement actions? Obviously, we'll be going to discuss those things when we'll be going to the particular chapter which is talking about the preventive and enforcement actions taken by the Security Council. Okay, may be suspended from the exercise of the rights and privileges of the membership by the General Assembly upon the recommendation. So here also, majority of the work being done by the General Assembly, but solely based on the recommendation of the Security Council. The exercise of these rights and privileges may be restored by the Security Council. So, if we try to understand this article is clearly making us understand that there are certain provisions of the certain provisions of this particular charter, which if you are not able to fulfill, or if there is preventive actions that has been taken against you. For example, I'll give you an example for a better understanding. There is a war that is going on between Ukraine and Russia. And now, hypothetical situation, let's try to understand that Ukraine or Russia is not the part of the United Nations Charter. Okay, they have not ratified it, neither they have been a old member. So, if they show their willingness to join the United Nations Charter, the first and foremost thing would be that whether they are peace-loving nations or not. If they fulfill that particular criteria and they happen to become the member of the United Nations, but after becoming the member of the United Nations, they tend to act in such a manner that causes hindrance in peace and security, and United Nations has opinion that they are of such a manner that they are not able to abide by the terms which has been mentioned under the United Nations Charter, then preventive actions will be taken by the United Nations, and that will be taken by the Security Council, but by the General Assembly on the recommendations of the Security Council. These privileges that has been enumerated and has been given to the members will be paused, and they will only be restored once Security Council is of the opinion that their rights and obligations rights and privileges should be restored. Now let's move to Article 6, which is talking about the different organs of the United Nations. Under Article 6, we talk about the different organs of United Nations. So I suppose Chapter 2, which is talking about membership, is clear to each and everybody. If you talk about Chapter 3, which is talking about the organs, as you already know that there are different organs of the United Nations, and that has been enumerated under Article 6. Article 6, it says that the principal organs of United Nations are: first, it will be the General Assembly; second, it will be the Security Council; third, it will be the Economic and Social Council; fourth, a Trusteeship Council; fifth, International Court of Justice; and sixth, the Secretariat. So if you see, and if you want to remember this, Article 6 equals to 6 organs, Article 6. Okay, so 6 organs, and it has been mentioned under Article 6. Such subsidiary organs as may be found necessary by the establishment in accordance with the present charter. So it is not exhaustive that these organizations are exhaustive. It can also increase in future time when it is needed, that there should be one more organ that should be created, and based over that particular decision, new organs can also be created. The United Nations, now we're talking about Article 7, and I am not repeating it again and again, but once we move to another article, then obviously there will be certain other requisites that needs to be fulfilled in that particular article. Now if you talk about Article 7 specifically, it is talking about the United Nations shall place no restrictions on the eligibility of men and women to participate in any capacity and under conditions of equality in its principles and subsidiary organs. So it is talking about equality amongst men and women. So as you know that when you talk about General Assembly, and obviously we're going to discuss the General Assembly post organs of the United Nations are completed, then when you talk about the capacity of the eligibility criteria of the members who are going to represent their specific nations under the United Nations. It is not specific that whether only men should be allowed, whether women should be allowed. But by virtue of Article 7, it has been clearly mentioned that there shall be no restriction. If you can see this particular article, it is saying that if United Nations shall place no restrictions on the eligibility of men and women to participate in any capacity and under any condition of equality in its principal and subsidiary organs, meaning which United Nations shall allow equality between men and women to participate in any capacity under any organs of the United Nations. Now let's try to understand. So far we have discussed about the generalized provisions of the United Nations Charter, what exactly how the membership would be. Then we have discussed about after the membership we have discussed about the organs of the United Nations. Now we are going to discuss these organs in a detailed manner, as you see under chapter 4. So if you talk about let's try to revise what all we have studied. We have studied the preamble, we have studied the principles and the purposes, then we have studied about the membership, and then fourth we have studied about the organs, and now we are studying about the General Assembly of United Nations. Now let's try to understand what does the General Assembly is composed of. And it has been mentioned in Article 9. So guys, is more important for you rather than understanding the whole concept. The reason being, there will be direct answers also, that under which article the General Assembly shall consist of all members of the United Nations. Under which article it has been enumerated that the General Assembly shall consist of all the members of the United Nations, and it has been mentioned under Article 9. Okay. Each member shall have not more than 5 representatives in the General Assembly. So if you talk about India, okay, I'm so sorry, let me try to make the map to the best of my knowledge. And if you can see, if it is India, then India is going to send 5 representatives. Okay, 5 representatives to the United Nations organizations, and these representatives shall represent India in the day-to-day discussions and important points that will be asked in the United Nations, and who will represent India in the General Assembly. Okay, so each member, here member means the nations as such. Okay, so it says that each members shall have not more than 5 representatives. So it is the maximum limit. So it can be either 3 also, it can be 4 also, it can be 2 also, it can be 1 also, but maximum amount of representation is 5. So composition, if we talk and we quickly revise it, then you will see that the General Assembly shall consist of all the members. Important point. General Assembly shall consist of all the members of the United Nations. Second, each member shall have not more than 5 representatives. Okay. Now, functions and power. It is talking about under Article 10. Now, what will the General Assembly do? The General Assembly may discuss any questions or matters within the scope of the present charter. First thing. Or relating to the powers and functions of any organs provided for in the present charter. We are talking about the powers that has been enumerated through the different organs of the United Nations, and any matter that is coming towards the General Assembly in regards to any questions or matters within the scope of this present charter, obviously they are going to discuss it, and except as provided in Article 12 may make recommendations to the members of the United Nations or to the Security Council or both on any such questions or matter. So it is the duty of the General Assembly to provide a specific threshold as to how the functioning of the United Nations will take place. Now, Article 11 talks about that the General Assembly may consider the general principles of cooperation in the maintenance of international peace and security, including the principle governing disarmament and the regulation of armaments, and may make recommendation with regards to such principles to the members or to the Security Council or to both. Understood? This is what Article 11 is talking about. It is also saying that the General Assembly may discuss any question relating to the maintenance of international peace and security brought before it. Now, it is important here that the question which is in relation to the international peace and security, if brought voluntarily, then obviously it will make a difference. Any member of the United Nations or by Security Council or by a state which is not a member of the United Nations in accordance with Article 35, Para 2 and except as provided under Article 12 may make recommendation with regard to any such questions to the state or states concerned or the Security Council or both. Any such questions on which action is necessary shall be referred to the Security Council by the General Assembly either before or after the discussion. So I suppose you have understood what is Article 10 and 11 talking about, and let's try to understand what is Article 12. Article 12 is saying. Article 12 says that the Secretary General, with the consent of the Security Council, shall notify the General Assembly at each sessions of any matter relating to the maintenance of international peace and security. So it is the Secretary General. Don't get confused that it will be the Security Council directly. No. Here it will be the Secretary General who will be providing information to the General Assembly on the consent of Security Council at each discussion any matter related to maintenance of, if the matter is related to the maintenance of international peace and security, which are being dealt with the Security Council, and shall similarly notify the General Assembly or members of the United Nations if the General Assembly is not in session. Immediately the Security Council ceases to deal with such matters. Okay, so with this we have almost completed the General Assembly portion. There are certain articles that have been left under the General Assembly, and obviously we will be discussing it in our further lecture series. But as of now, because we have limited time and constraints, I would request you all to kindly go through these articles. These articles, although it doesn't feel like that they are that much important, maybe if in the eyes of the CLAT aspirants, but these rights are perhaps very important. These articles are very important because now you have this idea, a clear understanding as to where to resort to, which article to resort to when these type of questions has been put forward in front of me. And that is why it is perhaps very important to know what exactly law says about a particular organization and particular scenario, that how the law will react to that particular situation. So I would like you all to just kindly go through the video and try to understand that what are the important provisions which has been enumerated under Article 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then obviously discuss about the important articles which is in relation to the General Assembly in our upcoming lecture series. Then we will be talking about the Security Council, then obviously Economic and Social Council, the Secretariat, and the International Court of Justice. With this, I would like to end today's video. Thank you all for being present in this current video. May you have a very good day. Till then, take care, bye-bye, and keep practicing, being persistent, and try to remember the principles that has been taught in this particular lecture series. Till then, bye-bye guys, take care.